That's the starting gun. So good morning, and I'm pretty excited to be part of the hosting of the Red Deer Mayoral Candidates Forum. A couple of reasons is I grew up in Red Deer and I just moved from there a couple of years ago. So I am quite familiar with the city and have been for a very long time. So I'd like to welcome all the guests and candidates to the 2021 Red Deer Mayoral Forum to discuss some of the issues that are important to people with disabilities in this municipal election. We are recording the session to be posted on our YouTube channel after the event. I would like to introduce you to Sam Mason, who is moderating the forum today. Sam is our accessibility coordinator, and without her, I would be lost in the navigation of a webinar. I am and have been these past 15 months eternally grateful for her technical skills, and welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much. So for anyone joining us today, I just want to go over some of the features and controls of the webinar. You should already be able to see that we have cart captioning being provided by Carol. You can turn those on and off by clicking the CC or live transcript button on the far right of your Zoom controls. We do regret to inform the audience today that due to some unforeseen circumstances, we were not able to secure ASL interpreters for this session. We are deeply apologetic to anyone who relies on that service, and we will get someone to do an ASL overlay for when we upload this video to YouTube and social media after the fact. If you have any questions for the candidates, please feel free to put them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, just to the left of the captioning button. Should you have any technical or accessibility difficulties throughout the event, please send them via chat, which is the first button on the left, to our panelists, and one of them will work with you to rectify them.
Thank you, Sam. We first want to start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on traditional territories in Alberta of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Today, we are joining from Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux, and specifically the ancestral space of the Papaschiis Cree Nation. We recognize that Red Deer is located on Treaty 7 territory, which is the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations, including Siksika, Buchanan, Kainai, Tsuut'ina Nation, and Stoney Nakoda First Nations. This morning's event is being hosted by two provincial organizations who bring the voice of people with disabilities into conversations like this that bring to attention the lived experience so that the leadership is aware of the disability lens when making decisions affecting their constituents. When we're looking at constituencies, we're probably looking at 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6 Canadians live with a disability, and that is for people who are under the age of 65 and seniors. The area that we focus on is the responsibility of all 3 levels of government. And today, we are focusing on the City of Red Deer and inviting the mayoral candidates to speak to the areas of accessibility and answering questions that we've received from our membership. My name is Margot Brunner, and I am the Executive Director of Voice of Albertans with Disabilities. Since 1973, our mandate has remained the same. The guiding principles are full participation. We are committed to breaking down barriers which prevent society from seeing beyond our disabilities so that we are included in all aspects of life. We will take charge of the social, political, and economic decisions that affect our lives. We will be accountable for our actions, and we must have choice in the services and supports that we require. We acknowledge this, and we accept the dignity to live with risk. Accessibility. All buildings and facilities must be accessible and barrier-free. Transportation, information, and communication services must meet the diverse needs of people with disabilities. Equity. We will be vigilant to ensure that our rights and freedoms are upheld. We claim our right to be equal while maintaining our individuality. We are sharing our forum with an advocacy group from Calgary who share the same guiding principles and works towards full citizenship for all Albertans, and specifically those who live with disabilities and those who support them. The Alberta Ability Network, formerly Calgary Ability Network, is a collaborative of stakeholders, people with lived experience and those who support them, health practitioners, community advocates, and government that strives to address systemic barriers facing people with disabilities, strengthen the disability sector, and influence policy and decision-making. We will now allow the candidates 1 minute to introduce themselves in alphabetical order by last name, starting with Buck Buchanan.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much for hosting this forum and making the awareness. As you said, my name is Buck Buchanan, and I am a veteran. I spent 28 and a half years with the RCMP in 4 different provinces, well, 3 different provinces and a territory, I guess. And I certainly have some lived experience in regards to PTSD, and also have been, an active member of AA for several years, although I probably shouldn't be saying things like that. But anyway, I certainly have dealt with Veterans Affairs over the years. I belong to the RCMP Veterans Association in Red Deer, and look forward to hearing, what people with that are veterans with disabilities think that as a municipal government we can do to assist or help and make things better in their lives.
Thank you, Buck. Ken Johnston, 1 minute of introduction.
Well, thank you, Margot, and thank you, Sam, for having us on this morning. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ken Johnston. I've been in Red Deer for 25 years, a couple of terms on City Council, and quite active in this issue in my former career as a banker. I was 40 years with Scotiabank. There's a couple of folks with disabilities on my campaign team that I'm humbled and honored to have, and I learn from them every day. I have to say, Margot, when you said the word systemic in your introduction, that really jumps out at me, because systemic marginalization and underemployment have always been the challenge, I think, or certainly a primary challenge with folks with disabilities. 2 out of every 5 Canadians that are in poverty are folks with disabilities. So that's clearly a huge, huge challenge. So I look forward to participating today. I've got some ideas and some advocacy ideas as well. And as I say, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Bradley Magee, 1 minute for introduction.
Thanks, Margot, and thanks for the invite today. It means a lot to be here today. I've lived in Red Deer for 20 years, and myself personally, I've got 2 nephews that struggle with some disabilities, and I see it on a regular basis, the kind of struggles that they have, not only with employment, but even just regular day-to-day activities. Like when the hub closed here in Red Deer, it caused a lot of issues for our people with disabilities in Red Deer, and it was a place for them to go and interact and do different social activities, and now they don't have it, and that's excuse me, it's been a bit of a problem for everyone involved. So that is definitely something that I'd like to see come back to our city for sure.
Thank you, Bradley. And Jeremy Moore, 1 minute for introduction.
Hello, my name's Jeremy Moore there. I'm an electrician by trade in Red Deer. My family and I live in Red Deer. I've been here most of my life. One of my boys there has autism, so I'm aware of certain levels of disabilities and stuff. My background is in building construction and development, and so I'm aware of accessibility needs and improvements that keep coming along as we keep moving and understanding what's needed for different accessibility requirements over time. I look forward to learning from this forum and trying to understand what parts of the disability issues that I'm not aware of.
Thank you, Jeremy. This is a good learning opportunity for us all. And Sam, I don't know if Mr. Allen could make it this morning, but I'll just turn the mic over to you.
Absolutely. So we will now begin our question and answer period. So we have a few questions that we got kind of recurring throughout the registrations of these forums. And I will start with those, but please, to those in attendance today, ask as many questions as you'd like in the Q&A. In the chat, whatever you would like to do. But we will start with these first two, or first three, I guess. The recurring issues we've heard are accessible and affordable housing, poverty reduction, which has been mentioned already this morning, and accessible and affordable transportation. Many people have expressed there's a gap in affordable housing, whether that be disconnect of income from age or anything else to different rental prices, or that there are very few places that are both accessible and affordable. We know that housing is one that gets addressed on all levels of government. So we were wondering how the candidates would incorporate accessibility and affordability for persons with disabilities into Red Deer's broader housing strategy. And so with that, we will start again in order, and we'll go with Buck because Mr. Allen isn't able to make it today.
Thank you very much, Sam. Obviously, you know, these are hugely broad issues that you're talking about, affordable housing. Excuse me. You know, we see the, you know, certainly federally right now is one of the main issues that's being spoken about in regards to the various federal parties and what they are going to do in regards to affordable housing. I also, as one of the things that I do, I've been sitting on provincial housing or housing panels for mental health, and I would suggest to you that ASH right now is most folks. I was just talking to a girl here the other day, and it's not sufficient. I mean, and most people are spending more than what they can afford, you know, in trying to keep themselves housed. And to a degree, we've seen some things in Red Deer, unfortunately, where people they've preyed or they've made a living off of folks that are on AISH. So I think that, you know, although AISH is a provincial responsibility, I think that somehow, you know, between the three orders of government, we have to figure out, you know, what is affordable, what can people afford, and you know, how do we try and connect the dots for that? The poverty reduction, we have an organization, you know, with the COVID thing. Obviously, they've been kind of a little stifled or stymied, called CAPRA, Central Alberta Poverty Reduction Association, and they've tried to figure out what a living wage is. And you know, the last that I was aware, you know, I think it was somewhere in the $17 to $18 range. You know, as you know, lots of folks, you know, aren't making that on, you know, on the minimum wage. Again, kind of outside the wheelhouse of the municipalities, but, you know, certainly, you know, things that need to be worked on, and the accessibility. We all know that we don't have enough, you know, affordable housing for folks, and you get into a lot of different labels in regards to, you know, 10%, you know, above market costs and these types of things. So I don't necessarily think that that it's a problem that's specific to veterans. I think it's a problem that's specific to Canadians, and I don't think that that certainly that Red Deer is unique. But I think that you hear quite often, tri-party politics, and quite often the municipal government is left out of that tri-party formula or system, and yet a lot of times we're kind of the wheels on the ground, or the people of first point of contact, and it makes it very, very difficult, when you don't have the money and yet you're trying to provide the service. So, I certainly, I'm open to, any thoughts or ideas that folks have in regards to affordable housing. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just get the question back up there for you. Something happened. There you go. So we will move to Ken Johnston.
Thanks, Sam. And Sam, how long do we have to respond to a particular question? Is there a time limit?
We're aiming for 2 minutes, but.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. So I'd like to just comment on a couple of areas here. We just adopted, when I say we, the City Council adopted about a year ago, the Community Housing and Homeless Integrated Plan. That plan talked in a very strategic way about the number of affordable housing units that Red Deer needed, and also the number of market housing units that were needed as well. So as Councillor Buchanan just said, certainly that's an issue on the federal parties, but Red Deer is what's called a community entity from the federal level. So it does have domain over federal housing dollars. It's also a housing authority under the provincial level. So once again, it has dollars available under those particular programs. So a couple of things that we've done recently, and this I would certainly encourage your membership, local membership, to be attuned to. We've struck a new housing committee. It's a new governance committee on how housing will be addressed in Red Deer going forward. It's a broad-based committee. It includes community members. And so I think it'd be an ideal place for somebody to make an application to sit on that particular board, because it is all about voices. Specifically, now I want to talk about the affordable housing piece as it relates to income. And I won't stay long on this because there's other questions that we'll touch on Bill C-35, which is currently in front of the federal government, stalled now because of the election, but pop-up income bill. It's the candidate disability benefit. And so advocacy will be needed on that from a housing perspective. Final thing I'd like to say, Sam, is the city's influence over neighborhood designs and neighborhood development. And that is allocation of public service lots and housing lots devoted to the particular issue that we're talking about right now. The city does have some levers to pull in that particular area. It is possible to pull them. They'll need a mayor that can lead that kind of influence. And certainly that's what I look forward to becoming. So there are several levers there. I'll summarize them once again. The ability to influence the new housing governance model and a seat at the table would be ideal. The Bill C-35 from an advocacy perspective and ensure that gets rolling after the federal election. And third, neighborhood design and accessibility around housing itself. So if we can pull some levers on that from a city perspective, we'll definitely move the dial on affordable housing for persons with disabilities. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. And we will move to Bradley Magee.
Well, Sam, I'm going to be a little blunt on this one. One of the biggest issues I keep hearing about in our city is zoning. Everyone's always complaining about zoning here, zoning there. Well, my issue with it is why hasn't the city of Red Deer moved forward with some different zoning changes and rules to allow for more things like carriage homes, where we could put our vulnerable population in these carriage homes at a much lower rent cost than what maybe they might be paying now. So by doing something like that, it would alleviate the stress that they feel, especially on their aged income. You know, it would definitely allow for a lot more freedom financially for them to do that. But yet, one thing that I see Red Deer doesn't seem to want to do is entertain these kinds of ideas. I mean, we can blame this on the provincial government all we want, but at the end of the day, it comes down to our city. So that's something that I want to move forward with 110% with not only our city, but our city council and the people who live there. and move forward with affordable housing and things like carriage homes. You know, waiting for the provincial government to or the federal government to even do anything or say anything, or waiting for an election. Either we're doing this or we're not. So that's my position on that. Waiting for somebody else to tell us what we can and cannot do doesn't get anything accomplished.
Thank you very much. And lastly, but not leastly, we will go to Jeremy Moore.
Thank you. I think one of the most important things is action. It's one thing to sit at the table and talk. It's another to actually, have action. Right now, currently, most of the federal parties are talking about a significant increase in low-income housing, issues like that, for funding on a federal level, and I believe even on a provincial level. It's critical that, in my opinion, a lot of our low-income housing and stuff has been built by private entities or not-for-profits. On the municipal level, I think it's critical that we streamline the process, that when these funds come available, that they're accessed immediately, and the city does what it can to reduce the red tape and get these projects off the ground and running as quickly as possible. And that's it. That's what I believe is critical in this affordable housing.
Thank you all very much. Great ideas, great opinions here. So we have touched on this a little bit with the conversation of income, and I think even in some introductions we heard that opportunities to education and employment might be limited for people with disabilities. So we do know that people with disabilities are more likely to live in poverty than those who are not disabled. How would you specifically work on alleviating poverty for persons with disabilities specifically? Sorry, yes, starting with Bud.
Well, thank you, Sam. People with disabilities and poverty, like I spoke earlier, Capra, I just see that they're, getting active again, or going to have a meeting. I think that we've, all of us have kind of been going through this COVID pandemic, 18 months of trying to figure out maybe what the what is, and I don't suggest that folks with disabilities aren't dealing with poverty. As I said, I think that as a municipality, we certainly have to be focused, I think, on what's a living wage. I've been recently talking to a young gal that lost her job as a result of a car accident and is now a paraplegic. And again, I think in a lot of instances it's the lived experience. For me to tell someone, we had a gentleman a few years back that was very instrumental in telling us, the situations and the circumstances, around trying to live with a disability, and just the simplest of things like, curb cuts on cement if you're, trying to get into a store if you're in a wheelchair. These types of things, where buttons are at when you go to cross an intersection. I mean, things that folks that don't necessarily have disabilities take for granted. And I know in a lot of instances, I certainly do myself, because I've been very, very blessed that, I don't have those types of disabilities. But, the poverty piece, as we heard, from Mr. Magee, he's got a couple of nephews that, has struggles in regards to, employment or maintaining employment. And again, we're certainly, in that era right now of, the job situation has not been great, certainly in central Alberta and Red Deer in particular. So like I said, this is a very broad question, and like I said, hopefully, can work with folks to try and figure out what some of the answers can be, and to certainly assist people that are living in poverty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buchanan. And we'll go to Ken Johnston.
Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciated Brad's comments earlier, and I just feel I need to respond that there are zoning for carriage homes in several areas of the city. And that has been the case for the last 5 years. As it relates to poverty, however, I think the chronic cause of poverty, as I said before, 2 in 5 people living in poverty in this country, 40% are persons with disabilities. And I really think it starts with underemployment. And as I said before, it's a terrible expression, but systemic marginalization. So the city, first of all, needs to be a leader in employment, and the city, first of all, needs to be a leader in opportunities. Now, we do have that. We do have equity and access, et cetera, in our HR statements and so on. But in my old banking days, we had what was called a corporate social responsibility strategy and platform, and that is something I think we need to bring to the city formally as it relates to this whole idea of underemployment. Again, when you think about a root cause of poverty, thinking of underemployment is a first place to tackle it by example. And then with our key partners across the city that we can influence with hospitals, colleges, schools, et cetera, we advocate, we lead by example. That's a first step. Councillor Buchanan certainly made a great reference to the living wage issue. That was getting traction up to about 3 or 4 years ago provincially. I was working with CAPRA in those days, the Poverty Reduction Alliance. And yes, the number was around $17, $18 and so on as a living wage, not a minimum wage. But I'll go back to Bill C-35 once again, which is that federal program that if people, for example, if you're on AISH in this province, that will top up the AISH. It won't replace it. It'll top it up. So it really is a very, very important piece of advocacy for the city, particularly the council and mayor of the city, to make sure that bill goes through. That bill will create employment or at least income equity for folks, which is obviously needed when you think of 2 in 5 folks living in poverty. So we lead by example. We look at our fee structures, transit structures, recreation structures, et cetera. We advocate on Bill C-35, and we leverage our own influence across the city with the key employers across our city. So those are some of the ways, Sam, that we can tackle the poverty alleviation. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And we will move to Bradley James Magee.
Well, I mean, C-35, yeah, I mean, it'll help with an extra couple bucks an hour, but at the same time, if they can't find jobs, does it really help? That's my issue with this. So in order to create employment, we have to create awareness about the situation that we have in our city. I mean, yeah, we have a couple of companies that do use or utilize some people with disabilities, but at the same time, there are so many more avenues that we could be exploring. And I believe that 90% of it, the reason why it doesn't happen is just because of awareness. I mean, does anybody really know what our population is in Red Deer of our people with disabilities? And I think if that information was more readily available and made accessible, I do believe that we would have more companies stepping up to the plate going, you know what, we can definitely, utilize these people. So I think more than anything else, it's about awareness. Yes, an extra couple bucks an hour does help over a minimum wage, but it's not the answer if we can't put them to work. And that's the issue here. So I believe that we need to create awareness first and work with different companies within the city to work with us and with them to make sure that these kinds of things can happen for them.
Thank you very much. And Jeremy Moore.
On the poverty reduction, speaking just like similar to the former or the existing councillors, it's such a broad issue. On the municipal level, I believe that municipalities are the ones that are seeing it firsthand. The people are interacting, at the bottom level with the municipality. So I think it's critical for Red Deer to communicate to the provincial and federal levels exactly what the needs are within the community. I think that's a very important part of the municipal level. And I'm not sure if that's getting through to those upper levels of government so that they can actually provide support to the community in multiple ways. Same thing, I ran into a guy the other day there. He spoke to me about his age and how low it is and how he can, he can hardly live, I want to say paycheck to paycheck or, check to check from age. And he can make it about 2/3 of the way through, and then he's out of money and stuff, and he's having a tough time at it. So it's critical that we lobby as a municipality to help get those rates increased. The other thing is that's coming is inflation. We're seeing it everywhere with the billions of dollars being pumped into the economies to prop them up because of COVID. I believe it's causing inflation right across the board. And I think you're going to see an increase in people that are suffering from poverty. So it's critical we try to keep up and try to help these people move forward. As for, city facility access, I think it's critical that these people who are suffering from poverty have access to proper transit, facility access, whether it's the pools or any number of items that they can access and enjoy the social aspects of the community at an affordable level. So I think the municipality has a role to play in that and making sure that they're inclusive into the community. And then the last I would say is, a certain amount of investigation needs to be done on taxation forgiveness. If these people are in the poverty level and yet they do own their home or some sort of shelter, and yet they're going to lose it because of a taxation issue, that the city has, is proactive in it, and they're doing what they can on the municipal level to keep these people in their homes doing what they can.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll just move into our last prepared question. Again, audience, if you feel like adding any questions into the Q&A or chat, please do. And yes, I'll move into the last question, which has to do with transportation. There are many challenges that we know of in transportation, especially in our winter province. There's scheduling issues, changes in service, affordability, and access to these services can be quite difficult. How would you as mayor manage Red Deer's transit system and policies to address the transportation challenges faced by persons with disabilities? And again, we'll start with Buck Buchanan.
Well, thank you, Sam. Well, transportation, as you just heard from Jeremy, is an interesting issue. Personally, I've kind of always thought that Red Deer we're kind of small enough that we're small and big enough that we're big, and it's with the transportation, situation like your question talks about scheduling and costs, and this is a huge dollar figure in the municipal world. We're subsidizing it about close to 70 cents on the dollar for folks, and like I said, it's always been a difficult situation to try and to get ridership, if you will, folks actually using the system. And of course, this last 18 months has been even more difficult in trying to figure out, recreation is another one for sure, but transportation in regards to, as you heard with even the employment, folks haven't had employment, so has then transportation become an issue for them. So it's really a difficult thing to figure out. And I certainly know that some folks on council, this has been a primary focus. We've gone through, study after study after study, how to make it more accessible, make it more usable, make it more friendly, make it more cost effective, and on it goes. So it's one of those things that, we've even had some suggestions that make it free. Me personally, I've been stationed in Toronto and in Vancouver, where public transportation is given. But again, like I said, I think that in Red Deer, we struggle with our size. We struggle with our our winters, like as was said. I mean, for the cold weather, people not wanting to, to wait. The dial up a bus thing has, had various different iterations. So it's really a complex situation, and how we can get more folks to utilize. Again, as mayor, with the people sitting around the table, we have to figure these types of things out, and it's certainly not just for people that are struggling, with poverty. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at, Sam.
Thank you very much. And Ken Johnston.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. As Councillor Buchanan was saying there, it is a broad issue for sure, but as it relates to persons with disabilities, one of the things that I've learned from my friends, my two good friends that are in long-term care homes, is the action bus is great, but is it timely? And so I think about action bus transportation quite a bit, if I was in the mayor's seat, how would I address the action bus? Well, I first of all, the first place to start is data around the usership and around the locations that are often preferred, rec centers or malls, doctor's offices, and so on. I know what it's like to stand in a lobby of a meeting place, and cold air coming in January with my buddy who's waiting for that action bus, and we still have 20 minutes to wait for the action bus. So really, I think it starts with the action bus and making that more fluid, if I might say it, that for users. Then you look at things like the size of the fleet. Do we have enough action buses to cut that waiting time down from a half an hour, for example, to 20 minutes or 15 minutes? And even if we do, and take on a capital cost, would we be strategic around, for example, having an increased fleet on Saturdays, for example, versus just having a regular fleet for the days of the week? There are different levers we can pull strategically around action buses. So I'll just say that would be a focus of mine if I was. There are certain other things we can do, very, very fundamental things, frankly, around neighborhood design, the spaces, if you will, the distance, I should say, between terminal stops and so on. And try doing that if you're a person with disability. It looks fine for some of us that are able-bodied, if you will, but for a person with disability, does it make any sense to have a standard separation for stops and sidewalk design and things like that? So really, in a word, as it relates to transit, it certainly would be strategic around the users, around the size of the fleet, around waiting times, and really evaluate how we're delivering for that segment of our citizens, as opposed to sort of a broad brush, if you will. So I hope that helps, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Bradley James Magee.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with what Ken said about our action buses, and whether we need more or we need to change the scheduling or whatever the case may be to help our people, more, so they have less wait times and that kind of thing. However, it's not just our action buses that need the assistance. It's also our local transit system. Having a conversation with a friend of mine, Heidi, one of the things that she expressed to me on a very regular basis is that she jumps on the bus from Riverside Meadows and to go down to the transfer station. And on the way down, she watches her connector bus go the other way. Well, that's kind of a problem. And she sits there for 45 minutes sometimes waiting for the bus to come. Now, she is on age. She does have some health issues that, you know, kind of cause her some problems. But the sad part of it is that she actually finds it quicker to walk the hour and a half to wherever it is that she has to go than it is to take the bus and stay warm. So it is a scheduling issue for sure. And we've seen lots of scheduling changes in the city of Red Deer for the last few years now. Some of them have worked out okay, some of them not so much. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board on that, because I know she's not the only person that has mentioned the same issue. So like Mr. Buchanan said, right? So it's a ridership issue. Well, we have a ridership problem because of the issues that we have with wait times and issues down at the transfer station, right? And yes, we need to reevaluate that, but at the same time, we also need to look at the bigger picture. What other issues are these people facing downtown with our current homeless population and issues there, right? And some of the crime and stuff that goes on down there. So, I mean, we need to look at this from a bigger perspective. It's not just ridership and transfer stations and timing and things like that. It's on a much bigger scale. And I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded to that concept. So in saying that, I believe that we need to be more open and inclusive to our vulnerable population and our people with just, you know, and like missing an extra bus or two, changing dates, or, you know, more on this day, less on that day. There's things that we can do, but I think we need to be more inclusive of our communities with for people with disabilities and our vulnerable population.
Thank you so much. And we will go to Jeremy Moore.
Thank you. Same thing, talking as I've been campaigning, so many people have complained about the functionality of the transit system. You know, I believe City Council and the city has pumped in a bunch of money into that transit system. We have a modern fleet. We have a, you know, environmentally friendly fleet. We're good that way. But a lot of the riders have said with the route changes and stuff, it's doubled or tripled the amount of time it took them to get somewhere. They'll mention it to the driver on the bus. The driver will say, well, you got to talk to the supervisor. So the rider talks to the supervisor and it seems to stall out there. The transit system, from what the people or the users are saying, is not being utilized properly. I think there needs to be a departmental review and some kind of incentive in there to encourage the department to function or find innovative ways to run it at a more efficient level and increase their ridership and reduce the amount of time that the people are having to ride on the bus or use the transit system. You know, it'd be nice just to get from A to B in the most effective way possible. I agree with Ken there on the action bus. I've heard that too. There's many elderly people I've talked to that said they've missed their appointments because the action bus is late or never came, or, you know, there's an issue there that needs to be reviewed on, you know, from the council level. If we need to purchase more buses to help facilitate our citizens for the action bus side, it's critical that we do that. We need to provide these people a service that they can utilize and use efficiently.
Awesome. That's all I have for our prepared questions. And I don't see any questions in the chat. We have a quiet group today. But that means you have as much time as you want, which is 15 minutes to close out with some final comments. So we will go in order again. Obviously, there's been allusions to built environment and curb cuts and sidewalks and those types of things. So if you want to go off of these questions and just address any other issues you might think pertain to people with disabilities in your closing statement, please do. And we will start closing with Buck Buchanan.
Well, thank you very much. And certainly thank you, Sam, for and the organization for hosting this very important issue. It's without a doubt, accessible and affordable housing, and poverty reduction transportation, recreation. These are all, they're not necessarily specific issues that are just specific to veterans. They're issues that are specific to all of the general public. Going back to the transportation thing there, one of the things with the action buses, and I did ride the action bus a few times with my dad prior to him passing away, because he was doing the dialysis 3 times a week at the hospital, and a lot of the action buses, are continuously, scheduled or tied up in regards to the dialysis unit. And again, it's one of those things, is that, necessarily a municipal issue, in regards to, providing, but, my mom and dad prior to them passing away were living in Manitoba in a small town, and they would have actually had to physically relocated from the small town that I grew up in to a larger center just to be able to facilitate, that service taking place. So like I said, the veterans issue, as I said earlier, when I first retired from the RCMP, in 2005, a lot of the individuals that were my vintage, I asked them why they didn't join the Veterans Association within the RCMP, and their response to me was they didn't think they were old enough, and yet they were veterans. So it was one of those things that always kind of tweaked me a little bit, in speaking with folks. Yeah, you are a veteran, you are retired, but you don't think you're old enough to be a veteran. So again, it's one of those things that sometimes we've got some folks out there that do need some help. I mean, we've heard today, in regards to the AISH issue, that again, something as a municipal government needs to be advocated to the provincial government, because as was said, I think by Mr. Moore, that he has an associate or a friend that makes it 2/3 of the way through the month, and the money just isn't there. Now there is, as Councillor Johnston has said, there's this top up, but again, it's not sufficient. We know that. Money is always the issue, the things come down to, but I think as the mayor, what I certainly would like to see is some type of a task force of the user groups to figure out what the needs are. I mean, we've got no shortage of problems, but the solutions are a little more difficult to get to. So, hopefully, through dealing with people and talking to people and creating, a better way and getting out of this, anyway, I apologize. As is fairly well known in the city of Red Deer, I'm a little bit technology challenged, and I like to say that we need to make it a better place for all. I mean, veterans, certainly that's near and dear to my heart because I happen to be one, but all of our citizens need accessible and affordable housing, good transportation, poverty reduction, adequate recreation, all of the things that make Red Deer the great place that it is. So at that, I will pass it on to somebody else, and thanks very much for hosting this.
Thank you. We should know by now it's Mr. Ken Johnston.
Thank you, Sam, and I'll certainly echo Councillor Buchanan's thanks for being on board this morning. You know, this has just been a terrific opportunity. I'll just add some final words on some things I've already talked about, but I think they're very, very important for us to carry away from our meeting this morning, and that's the whole idea once again of systemic marginalization of people and underemployment of people. If we can move the needle on employment alone, because employment will create dignity. Sam, you're a tireless advocate. You know what I'm saying there. Dignity gives hope and dignity gives purpose to people. So as I said before, I look forward to leading a city that leads by example, that can leverage their influence with other community partners as an example. And it's certainly on a more broader based approach than we have at this point in time. So there is certainly underemployment as a main issue, to say the very least. I'll comment a little bit on affordable housing. As I said before, following that housing plan that we adopted about 15 months ago, the ability for a broad-based community group to influence how those funds are going to be spent, the opportunity for persons with disabilities to influence that group. I would invite your local advocacy group to get involved on the ground, Sam, to get involved with their councillors, to get involved with their mayor as to how that will impact persons with disabilities going forward. The pot government and from the provincial government is only, so big. And this is an opportunity to advocate, I think, in a very real way around those issues. The last thing I'd like to talk about is just my own experience with my friends that are in long-term care that are people with disabilities, and how many times I have noticed just the ordinary thing like a narrow elevator door, just the ability for somebody to back in or to front in, if you will, in a wheelchair to a narrow elevator door, clanging their foot pedals, clanging their wheels and so on. And I remember one day my friend looking at me and saying, Ken, why must it only be the minimum requirement for people with disabilities? Why can't we do more as it relates to that? He made an excellent point. It's not that long ago environmentally that we had gold standards and platinum standards for the environment when it came to building design. And why wouldn't we have gold standards or platinum standards when it comes to access with building design? Really, it's not really much of a stretch. And it is one of the levers that the city can influence. This is a broad-based issue, as we've all said, but there are levers that we can get to. I think there are opportunities there that we have yet to implement, and it could be just as simple as something as elevator doors, washrooms, and some building design to help at least on that part. But I really am optimistic, Sam, and I'll just conclude by saying once again, let's forget the underemployment of our folks with disabilities. 2 out of 5 in poverty in this country, unbelievable. And that is an area that we can press on, and I hope press on successfully. Thanks once again, Sam. It's been a real treat this morning.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Bradley Magee.
Thanks, Sam. So yes, obviously we have this underemployment issue. We have our the poverty issues and things like that. There's also the other issues of just social interaction as well too, right? Like I mentioned before, when the hub was closed, a lot of people lost their ability to interact with their friends and other people. So one of the things that I would like to see come back, or especially I'd like to see our city kind of advocate for, is that very same kind of thing. So I've had some conversations with some of the different organizations in Red Deer, one of them being Moves with Jagger. And one of the things that we talked about was talking to the different rec centers within our city to see if they would work with us to, open up a room for an hour or so, here and there to kind of, and to allow our people with disabilities to come in and do just that, to interact, to do their activities and just get out of the house, right? That's the one issue that my nephew faces. Like he won't ride the transit by himself. He gets freaked out. Right. So, but he doesn't have his care worker anymore either. When the hub was closed, he lost his care worker. All that funding for all of that disappeared, and it's extremely difficult for him to get out and socialize and interact with his friends because of these kinds of issues, because of the funding that was pulled. So yes, we do have a poverty issue and an underemployment issue, but we're just scratching the surface as far as I'm concerned with this. We need to really branch out and really look further into the other issues that do affect our population with disabilities as well. So, and I think that's something that we as City Council can definitely help. And pick up the phone and say, hey, would you be willing to work with us on this? It's not a hard thing to do. But since the hub closed and even since the restrictions were lifted, there's been nothing come back. And to me, that's a little bit disheartening to see from our city that after all of these things happen and with COVID, and I understand with COVID, everything was kind of a nightmare. But when everything was lifted, I don't understand why our city didn't try to advocate for these people as well, to try and, get them back out and back in society and all of those kinds of things, right?
We did.
Thank you for the interruption, Ken.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know I was live, Brad. Sorry. My apologies.
Okay, but so on that then, Ken, I have yet to see any of these that welcomed my nephew in to do any of these kinds of activities. And his mom has been very active in looking for these kinds of things to find out where to go and, what times and when and where and who is going to be there and those kinds of things. And you know what she found? Nothing. And that to me is the most disheartening part of it all. You guys are saying that you did, but it wasn't readily available to the people that needed it the most. That's an issue that I have right now. And I'll cut it there.
Thank you very much. And we will go to Jeremy Moore, and then I'll pass it back to Margot just to close us up.
Thank you. As your mayor, I commit to showing up. When you have an event, when you have an issue, I'll be there. I commit to being accessible. So, I commit to making sure that, you can grab a phone and phone me and get an answer in a timely manner or a response in a timely manner. As your mayor, I commit to being in the community. Like here I am right now in my truck, and I'll make time for people with disabilities, for the issues to confront them as quickly as possible. I understand a lot of the issues going on. Having, we build buildings. Building codes are currently changing. It is frustrating when we do stuff and we'll see stuff grandfathered in, and you say, well, that doesn't help anyone today because it's grandfathered. So there's got to be an encouragement on the development side and redevelopment side to make sure that the accessibility issues come to the forefront. Bathroom accessibilities, sidewalk accessibilities, parking lot accessibilities are all accounted for, and upgrades are taken action on. So, having my background on that, I understand how all that works. Where I look to grow and stuff is on the social issues within the disability community, but I commit to being one that's accessible and one that'll listen and one that'll take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And I would like to thank Ermira and Maison, who joined us from Calgary this morning from the Alberta Ability Network. My apologies, I didn't see you in the screen, but I can absolutely see you now. So thank you for joining us, everyone, today, and especially to the candidates who have taken the time out of their very busy schedules to be here with us. We believe Red Deer can be a truly welcoming, inclusive, and accessible city for all, and you've been here to indicate your commitment to all the citizens of Red Deer. I appreciate all of the input into the challenges, and I especially appreciate that for the challenges, there are solutions.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for the invite. Have a great day.
Thank you.